Senator from Kentucky.
To continue spending money at the current levels will inevitably lead to the bankruptcy of our great nation. My amendment, in order to stave off such a terrible fiscal outcome, would cut approximately 1% of our budgetary spending and help to put us on the path towards fiscal responsibility. In June of this year, the national debt surpassed $32 trillion. Then in September, the national debt surpassed $33 trillion. You heard that right. It took Congress 90 short days to add $1 trillion in debt. Unless we change course, the debt will consume us. America's future as a nation is not threatened from without, but from within. Our mounting debt will ultimately force a day of reckoning. The Congressional Budget Office predicts that we will add an average of $2 trillion in debt every year for the next decade. Using Congressional Budget Office projections, the U.S. government will add over $5 billion to debt. Will add over $5 billion to its debt pile every single day for the next 10 years. We borrow over $176 million every hour. We borrow $3 million every minute, and we borrow $50,000 every second. It's only a matter of time before the world wakes up and refuses to buy our debt. This reckless level of borrowing and spending is patently unsustainable. The ever-increasing heights of our debt mean a weak economy, high inflation, and confiscatory tax rates. In other words, today's spending threatens tomorrow's prosperity. According to William McBride of the Tax Foundation, outside of the pandemic years, this year's federal deficit is the highest in U.S. history. McBride continues, figures from the Congressional Budget Office for fiscal year 2023 indicate that the federal deficit grew by about $2 trillion. McBride also states that while tax revenue has increased 28% since pre-pandemic year of 2019, spending has increased 46%, and the deficit has more than doubled. Annual deficits are headed towards even $3 trillion a year if we don't wake up and do something about it. McBride concludes, in sum, the federal budget continues on a perilous course. Now would be a good time for our political leaders to present a coherent plan for dealing with the debt problem before it becomes an urgent crisis. That's why I'm here on the floor today. Americans are starved for a voice of fiscal sanity. Americans understand far better than the nation's elites that the time is running out. Americans will pay dearly for Congress's inability to say no to every cause, every line item, every pinstripe lobbyist. We will pay more to Uncle Sam in the form of taxes. We will pay more for groceries because of high levels of inflation that will destroy our purchasing power. And we will find that a generation of kids won't leave their parents' homes because businesses cannot afford to hire them. But it doesn't have to be this way. America can once again be a rising nation, and we can take that first step towards a brighter future today. My amendment will make across-the-board reductions except for defense and veterans benefits. Additionally, the amendment would cut $30 billion from the Biden administration's attempt to sick the IRS on American taxpayers, to squeeze even more money out of those who have earned their hard-earned dollars. All told, my amendment would save taxpayers $50 billion, which is only about 1% of all budgetary spending. It's a small and modest reduction in spending, but it's a step in the right direction. This is not the first time I've offered an amendment to save the taxpayers' money. Throughout my time in the Senate, I have time and time again offered balanced budgets and plans that would shave pennies, mere pennies, from every budgetary program to restore our fiscal health. And every time these proposals are rejected by the Senate. The result of failing to act then is that today we now vote in the shadow of a mountain of debt. It's time that we rise up and tell your members of Congress that enough is enough. It is time to take a stand while the restoration of American prosperity is still within our grasp. By the time this continuing resolution expires, the people who ask for your vote next year will have added another $1 trillion to the debt. It's time to take a stand. I urge a yes vote on my amendment and call up amendment number 1366 and ask that it be reported by number.
The clerk will report by number.
The senator from Kentucky, Mr. Paul, proposes an amendment number 1366.
President.
The senator from Washington.
Madam President, there is a lot we need to get done. As soon as we prevent a shutdown by passing this continuing resolution, we need to come together in a bipartisan way to keep working on things like the comprehensive supplemental funding package for Ukraine and Israel, for humanitarian assistance and more. And of course, we've got to pass our full-year spending bills that live up to the agreement this Congress passed in a bipartisan way and meets the needs of our communities. These are real issues that we need to take seriously and move on quickly. And then there is this amendment, which, let's all be honest, is just not serious, but would be absolutely devastating. This amendment would slash huge swaths of discretionary spending by a whopping and totally arbitrary 15%, not to mention the cut to the IRS of $30 billion. We are talking across-the-board cuts with no rhyme or reason that would devastate our families, our economy, our competitive edge, and our national security. That is not a solution. It's not serious. It is a gift to our adversaries who want us to fall behind. And it's a slap in the face to families across the country who are counting on the critical investments Congress makes in their communities. I urge all of my colleagues to join me in voting against it. Thank you, Madam President. I yield the floor.
Madam President,
Senator from Kentucky.
I yield back my time and call for the yeas and nays.
Is there a sufficient second? There appears to be. Clerk will call the roll.
Ms. Baldwin, Mr. Barrasso, Mr. Bennett, Mrs. Blackburn, Mr. Blumenthal, Mr. Booker, Mr. Bozeman,